Bright Duty. Every student matters.
Students, now I will take up some important questions from the chapter How do organisms reproduce? First, let us take up the topic of asexual reproduction. Question number 1. How does binary fission differ from multiple fission? Now, if you remember, in binary fission, what happens? There is a unicellular organisms. Let us take up an example of amoeba and with a nucleus. So, when this cell is ready for reproduction, first the nucleus starts dividing into two. It elongates and it starts by duplication of chromosomes. It divides into two parts. Then slowly the cytoplasm also starts dividing into two parts, the cytoplasm. So this gives rise to two daughter cells with nucleus. So in binary fission, one cell gives rise to two daughter cells. But in multiple fission, what happens? Let us take an example of Plasmodium. The nucleus divides multiple number of times and it gives rise to many daughter cells. Right? So, some of the cytoplasm collects around each of the nuclei and it gives rise to many daughter cells. So, whenever the conditions are favorable, this wall will split and these daughter cells will be released. So, one of the differences in binary fission, two daughter cells are formed, but in multiple fission, more number of daughter cells are formed. Another difference, this happens only under favorable conditions, but in multiple fission can take place both in favorable as well as under unfavorable conditions. In multiple fission, what happens? There is a hard covering which is called cyst outside each daughter cell, which protects the daughter cell from unfavorable environmental conditions like high temperature or dryness, less amount of moisture. It protects each cell. But there is no such cyst formation in this binary fission. This happens, one of the example is amoeba, another example is paramecium. An example for multiple fission is Plasmodium. So these are the differences between binary fission and multiple fission. You can explain them along with the diagram. Question number 2. How will an organism will be benefited if it reproduces through spores? So I hope you remember in fungi, like the bread mold, there are hyphae with sporangium and the root-like structures. So these sporangia, they bear spores, right? So when the spores are ready, these sporangia, they burst and the spores are released into the air. So what are the benefits to this organisms which are reproducing through spores? Firstly, these spores, this is the most important benefit. The spores can bear the unfavorable conditions because they have a hard covering around it, which is called a cyst. So it protects the spores, and whenever conditions are favorable, these spores can reproduce. Second benefit is these spores are very light in weight, right? So they are very tiny and light in weight, so they can easily disperse through wind or water or through animals. They can disperse through far away areas. And thirdly, it is a very fast mode of reproduction. In a given time, thousands of spores can be released into the air. So, it's a faster mode of reproduction. Secondly, the spores can adjust even in unfavorable circumstances. Thirdly, the spore dispersal is very easy because they are small, tiny and very light in weight. Third question, describe the process of budding in yeast. So, in my previous video, I just told you what is budding. It is another mode of asexual reproduction. Let's take up the example of yeast. Yeast is a unicellular organism with a nucleus. So, when a cell is mature enough, a bud starts to appear. Right? Then, this nucleus also starts to divide and it elongates and it divides into two. So, one of the portion goes into the bud. Then, what happens? This bud has a nucleus. So, whenever it is mature enough, this detaches from here and forms a separate daughter cell. Sometimes, more than one bud are formed which remain attached to the parent cell. This is multiple budding. At a time, many buds can be formed. This is how it happens in yeast. Budding also takes place in hydra. In a similar fashion, a bud is formed which matures enough and then detaches. Right? So the next question. Why is vegetative propagation used to grow some plants? So vegetative propagation is a process in which new plants are formed from the non-reproductive parts of the plant or the vegetative parts of the plant, not the flower. Either the stem, right, as in case of sugar cane and rose, either from, it can take place through underground tubers like in potato and dahlia, and it can also take place through leaf as in bryophyllum. So why do some farmers use vegetative propagation to grow some plants? Now the first reason is, for some seedless plants, it is the only mode of reproduction. As for example, sugar cane and banana, they are seedless plants. So this is the only mode of reproduction. Second reason why they use vegetative propagation is, it is a faster mode of growing plants. So plants which are grown by vegetative propagation, they grow up fast and they bear fruits and flowers faster as compared to a plant grown through seed. So the farmers, they get the crops are ready in a shorter duration of time. Thirdly, when you grow a seed, you are not sure which quality of the plant will grow up into. But in case of vegetative propagation, we know the part of the plant which we have taken from the parent plant, we know the quality. For example, you took a stem from a red rose plant, you know the buds will bear the red rose only. So the good characteristics or the desirable characteristics of the parent plant can reproduce further through vegetative propagation. So these are some important questions from asexual reproduction.